You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way. Oh, welcome to the party. I am top of the show, SavageMick. I'm not finished yet. You back off. Back for down there. Back for a barn raising, waffle stomping 2024. Over to you.
I'm Warlord Scarr, here to raise hell and then put it back down again because it gives me lip.
I'm Dave. Like in bronze position. Bronze Age. Bronze Age is cool. Carry on.
And I'm Owen. Step away from the streaming website and listen to me with great care. What I'm about to say is of deep import. We're going to teach you how to GM.
But the thoughts? I thought watch. No, okay, no, we won't discuss thoughts. Let's discuss the thickest member of any gaming group, the GM. And are you a bad enough dude, or dudette, or dude other to be a great GM?
This is apparently the big hot topic as gaming judo celebrity, the Alexandrian, has released a book, How to Be a GM, and it is apparently like so popular and just running off the Amazon wish lists that I don't think a single copy has actually made it to Europe yet.
I didn't get my Christmas copy. I was going to spend all of Christmas in a cave in Roscommon, watching the wildebeest charge across the snowy tundra, just reading that book, and as each page was finished, I'd rip it from the spine and feed it into the fire so the tribe might live, thus converting the entire thing into an oral history. But it didn't arrive. You can't get it. It's on its third reprint.
Yeah, so obviously some random podcasters will have to take up the slack.
Look, I can do what every psychologist in the world refused to do. I can tell you what's wrong with you in 5 minutes, right? What it comes down to is, okay, for GMing, right? Before, you're going to be worried about GMing because you've never GM'd and you've watched people GM. And the GM is the greatest card trick player in the world because he gets to change the rules whenever he wants without telling anybody. He gets to cheat whenever he tells everyone, and no one can call him on it. Okay? If you watch someone else GM, you will give yourself the worst performance anxiety in the world. Do not watch anyone else GM before you're starting. Do not prepare by going, I'm going to watch Critical Role. Critical Role benefit from being actors, being voice actors, and being edited. Do not compare yourself to Critical Role. It is like deciding to learn, we'll say, woodworking, rather than another example, from watching a master carpenter produce something ridiculous. Do not start there, right? Do not, there's probably some value in reading a book called GMing for Dummies, and good on the Alexandrian for putting it out, but that is not where I'd start. You learn GMing by jumping in and starting to GM. Before you start GMing, you will have 1,000 questions. 95% of them are irrelevant. They don't matter. After you GM your first game, you'll have 20 really important questions that you do need an answer for. That's when you go asking questions. You have to jump in and do it. And the best piece of support you can have for yourself is a starter adventure with pre-published characters. There's a good 10, 20 excellent box sets out there. Pick the one you like the look of, read it yourself, throw it on the table, and say, guys, we're going to play this in a week. Who's in? And start.
If you really don't feel like investing a lot of let's say capital in ahead of time, there's a lot of free rule sets out there. Free, I'll show a little bias here by saying free OSR games gets you a bunch of search results. Just saying.
Yeah, or just going on itch.io for a few hours, so you'll get all the pay what you want or absolutely free short games as you need. See previous episode.
Solid suggestions, and I'm gonna concrete one of them. Go and find. So Skrillex wrote an amazing introductory adventure with the help of, I don't know, OK Computer or someone. It's called The Tomb of the Serpent King. His name isn't Skrillex. That's the dubstep guy.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Gallagher or something. Look for
Skirples.
Tomb of the Serpent King. Skirples, that's it. With the aid of something, Scribble Princess?
Scrap Princess, I believe.
Scrap Princess. I'm a reader. I read.
She is an artist, and her art is scribbly. But
it's an amazing primer on GMing because it is written as an introductory scenario and explains all of the things you're going to do. And it's written for the OSR crowd, but that's a good place to start. That's not bad. Back to you.
It is theory crafted to heck and back, and that does help you, like, give you an example of why a thing is the way it is. It helps you get into that what Chesterson's fence mentality that a lot of people you get an awful lot of very weird heartbreaker RPGs where someone saw a random D&D rule, went, this is ridiculous, ripped it out and made his own heartbreaker without ever actually having run the game or actually see what it actually was.
There's a reason why rule is there. It may or may not be a good reason, but if it's sticking around, well, you should probably find out why before you start making big changes and thinking, well, but then again, hard experience, happens. I mean, I certainly have made some house rules in the past which worked out, in a varying result. Let's just say.
I was looking at Party GM Anthem there and going, what the hell is what's Savage talking about? But anyway, okay. The thing I do is I would spend the money on a box set for one of the good ones for the following reason: it financially commits you to doing it. Right, so you've said, I can't waste that money, I got to use it. Number two, there's often a ton of supplementary materials in there that just help you a little bit. You've got a physical map to hand out, you've got physical character sheets to hand out, right? The reason I would say give everyone a pre-gen to start is it lowers barrier to entry. No one's got to read the character creation rules. No one's got to figure out how to build a character. And more importantly, you're protected from people writing backstory. Okay? You do not want to deal with backstory game one. That's a later game topic, right? You want to start out, get your feet wet by making this as easy as possible. You don't want basically things about backstory. You don't want to start considering spotlight time. You don't want to be considering, how is everyone? You get through the first game. Then you can start worrying about, does everyone have a good time? Momentum and novelty will get you through the first game, right? Your first game you will over-prepare for. You will be over in energy for. Do not worry about the first game. The game to worry about is game 3 or 6 or 9.
They ever have decision paralysis is horrible. Like you don't you learn by doing, like as Owen has helpfully pointed out.
Yeah, I know what the title card for this is now. It's what's his face. Just do it, guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Shia LaBeouf is your guardian angel in this regard. I could give my own stories of how I was a worried little soul over preparing my first game, where I was like, I need to design the world of Ozalon, and every crevice of it must be filled with adventure and intrigue, and most of the first couple of sessions was the players dealing with the giant hole that they had put in the bottom of the second tavern they'd found, because they ran out of drinks in the first one. Moved down to the next tower, next thing, and then started a bar fight and just started putting holes in the floor. Yeah, that's what happens when you have a gigantic hammer and you jump off a table and roll natural one.
I'm just going to jump in here and inexpertly take Owen's point and Scar's point. To get the TIG welder out and do a sloppy weld job. Owen, absolutely correct. Don't give them the opportunity for backstory. It's a terrible idea. They'll bore the pants off you because their backstories are rubbish and they're all basically ripping off Aragorn or, I don't know, Han Solo. And Yeah, and to go to Scar's point, your ideas for world building, your lore is rubbish. Don't do it. Again, you'll spend far too much time in it. It's irrelevant. Your players don't care about it, and if you try and force it down their throats, they will not be there for session 2. Ignore that. Don't detail the second tavern until they've finished ruining the first one. Dave.
The advice that comes to mind from from repeatedly reading a lot of Kevin Crawford books lately, boils down to, if you enjoy world building, great, but otherwise, don't create stuff that you don't need to use straight away. Like, as a rule, create what you need for the next session, or as the priority. Like, is what he's trying to get across.
If not to continually be just calling back to our episode about shorter campaigns, but yeah, like, it is counterproductive to be planning for the epic 20 level battle with 27 beholders and the god of all liches, when what your main focus of your first couple of games would be is to discover your own GMing style and your players' preferences, like what they're expecting to see, what interests them, what gets them activated, as it were. Like, because that's vastly more important information. Like where, like, what possible bad guys could have, like how many factions should I have in the King's Court, and all that stuff. That is stuff that can very easily be come up with in a few sessions. But what you're really paying attention to is, like, what are you working towards in the minute-to-minute game? Like, how are you rolling things? How are you engaging with players, and then how are the players engaging with content backwards? Like, those are the vital things to learn.
I'd actually say, okay, I'm going to say, here's what your objectives for your prep for the first game should be, right? You should use a starter box, because the starter box usually comes with a cut down version of the full core rules. Mm-hmm. Okay, there is a 300 to 600 page textbook waiting for you when you decide to read the full rules, full of world building and character options and a bunch of stuff you do not need to care about, right? What I'm going to tell you to do is you have to read the abbreviated rules they've given you in the starter set and the plot of adventure twice. You have to read it the first time, extract what you can, figure out what you can. Maybe you pop online and see someone playing it on, like, what the hell does this mean? How do I do an opposed test? Right? But read it, and then after you finish reading it, a day or two later, you go back and you read it again. Ideally, the day you're going to run the session, part of your prep is to read back over the adventure. But you need to read it twice, because that should hopefully embed the thrust of what's going to happen in the game.
And a rough idea of where everything is. And things you should be watching out for that you're not going to realize when reading for the first or maybe even the second time, because important stuff can be buried in adventure write-ups, like even pretty good ones.
100%. Now, here's another thing. Unless you are a teacher or a lecturer or some sort of person that works in that field, it is unlikely you're used to talking for 3 hours. Right? Step number 2 is you're going to have to... Unfortunately, I would recommend some breathing stuff, but you're not standing, so it's harder. So I would recommend you have a big-ass bottle of water by your right hand. All right? And I want you to take sips from that constantly. You're going to take sips from that whenever you're thirsty. You're going to get sips from that whenever you get asked an awkward question. You're going to take a long water sip whenever someone does something you don't fully expect, to give yourself a few moments to think about it, and also to keep your throat nice and hydrated and moist. And you're probably still going to run out of puff halfway through, because you're not used to talking that much. Because you're going to be talking, probably as a new GM, for 80% of the time.
You're going to have to explain the system more than likely.
Yeah, you learn going on how to talk less. but initially you're going to be talking the most. So make sure you have fluids around to keep yourself hydrated, right? Keep yourself alert.
Keep that throat lubricated.
100%. Okay.
And if they really throw you for a loop, go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
you're human.
absolutely.
You're allowed to take a dump and take the rule book with you.
Yeah.
Great time to just flip around.
The tactical pee is very important. We'll get there, but that's your 2 emergency levers: the long water sip, and I have to go for a pee. All right. I wouldn't recommend taking up smoking. Smoking's horrible for you, but you have that option in your back pocket as well. I wouldn't do it, but I know some GMs have.
Yeah, it'd be for a cigar, and that's just I could write the scenario in that time.
That's kind of ostentatious. So, read it twice. Have plenty of water to drink. And then a lot of them will give you box text. Now, box text to read out, and some people are fans of box text, some people are not. Lean on the box text initially to get you going. Look at the opening scene and make sure you're aware of the prompts you should give players. XXX just happened. A half-orc with 2 chainsaws strapped together has walked into the bar and started swinging them around like nunchucks, hollering X character's name. What do you do? And that's a very important thing to kind of implement in the players, because it goes to the players, something's happened, what do you do? Which is the core of RPG play. Is something just happened, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And
you want to engage with the world. Like, that is the game. Like
100%. And sometimes you have to just go, if someone foosters, it's just going to come to the GM style, but initially you give them a slow count of 5. You don't have to say it, but you can put the fingers out and count. Okay, you're not sure what to do. Next person, what do you do? And that's fine. You can come back to them if you're a merciful person. If you want to teach them a lesson about having a response, you basically go on to the next. It's tough for them too, because they're just starting to play, but it's way harder on yourself, so take every short cut you can initially.
It's also delaying everyone else, because they're still having to wait. I mean, what I try to encourage people to do is to think about what they want to do during, when it's not their turn. So at least, even if the situation changes, like, okay, the orc I was going to sweet talk has run out the front door. Okay, I'm going to try something else, but at least they're thinking in those lines.
100%. Now, you're going to get asked rules questions. How do I do X? You should be familiar with the core resolution mechanics. That's why I had you read the starter adventure and the starter rules twice. You should be familiar enough with them to explain how they work. If you do not know how a specific rule interaction works, maybe someone decided to cast a spell, maybe someone is doing something funky, right? What you do is you give yourself a very short period of time to look that up. I would say 2-3 minutes, right? If you cannot find it in 2-3 minutes, you make a gut roll. You say, look, just roll a dice and we'll see. If you roll high, you succeed. If you roll low, you fail. And you tell that person, I can't find the roll right now. We'll just roll dice to see what happens. But we're going to come back to it. And next session, I'll look up how it works and I'll explain it in the next session. Don't pause your game to figure out how the rule works.
What kills the energy?
Going. Yeah. It's not, especially for your starter. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. But you make a note. And you make sure at the start of next session, what you say is, these questions came up during the sessions. This is what the answers are. Because that looks like you're committed and you put preparation time into the game, which you did. But these are part of the relevant questions that will come up. Do not worry about all your questions before you start playing. Most of them are rubbish silliness you've made up in your own head. The questions that come out of the first game are actually the ones that matter, because those are the ones you need to handle for the next session.
On the narrative side, read that scenario twice and figure out how the plot is meant to go. Because it isn't going to go that way. Your players are going to knife an important character. But as long as you have an idea of how it should pan out, you can improvise, you can bring in their twin brother, you can bring them back from the dead. You can just, if you're getting a feel for it, you can just roll with it and anticipate how things change with that character gone. Don't be a slave to that plot, because that'll make you railroad your players. You don't want to do that. Be prepared know what's meant to happen or what the writer thought should happen, and understand that the RPG writers are universally terrible. The only people that are worse than them are RPG GMs and RPG players. So just be on top of the plot, but don't let it railroad your game.
And
bring snacks? No, make the other people bring snacks. You're doing all the work. Set a snack policy.
But yeah, on the point of what's like we're saying, the rulings are something that you may have to make a decision. That sorry, the snacks thing's throwing me off.
You just ate.
No, like I had a thought, and then
it's rough and tumble in here, buddy. I'm sorry. You gotta swing that bat, Lax Warlord. Holler out those opinions. What you got?
It was something to do with campaign direction, or not campaign direction.
Think on your feet.
You don't have to know how a campaign will end. You don't even need to necessarily know how we'll go that session.
Sorry, that was us. It was information flow. Yeah, the point about we can go back to the campaign flow thing. It's that as well as having to make rulings on rules, I suppose is one thing. You're also going to have to. The main thing you're going to have to be unaware of is when people are doing things that don't make sense. That you have not. Their assumptions of what is happening for their character. There's probably been some communication error, or they have just visualized in their head differently than you didn't even think that there were that kind of visualization possible because you didn't have the same base assumptions. And you're looking to get people on the same page. The much like the very first thing you're seeing is this thing happens. What do you do? The second question you're going to have to be asked doing a lot. And this is the reason you're going to be talking for 80% of the time. The second question you're going to be saying a lot is, what are you trying to do? Because people will get focused on achieving an action, but may not be quite clear as to what the goal of their actions is. And this is where an awful lot of the mismatches that you'll hear in various RPG horror stories come from. So never be afraid to just hold us stop and say, like, okay, before you roll your murder pope skill or whatever, what is the end goal here? And it's just like, oh, I just want his hat. And then just like saying, you can just buy a hat down the shop. It's 3 silver pieces. Like, that those are going to be the likely result of pain points between players. It's just matching assumptions is going to be what. If world building has a reason to exist in the early sessions of your game, it'll be so to put everyone on the same page. What
is this world the characters are from? Like,
yeah, and that's something that but like, as I say, that's not an excuse for you to be giving off, a novel's worth of lore in the first hour and a half of your session. This is like, you should be able to give cliff notes in, like, if it's more than a minute to read out, it's probably too long.
Yeah,
and you should be able to give the vibe of what a scene is supposed to be. Like, is it meant to be a jovial, fun-loving scene, or is it meant to be dark and grim? And you should be given that in sort of like scene openers, just describing horrible weather or jovial music, or the tensions in the crowd or whatever.
Like, one of the things about it's very important to have an elevator pitch, a 1 or 2 minute explanation for what the world is. This is why sometimes it's really good to for your first RPG to run an established setting. Like, if you go, it's Star Wars. Now, you'll get one person in your group say, I've never seen Star Wars, never heard of it. What is this? Is it some kind of, is it anything to do with Storage Wars? You may get that. This life happens. Like, we were playing Warframe for the first time, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, And someone said, "What's the setting like?" And I said, "It's the Holy Roman Empire." And they went, "I have no idea what that is." And I said, "Okay, number one, it's not holy, and number two, it's nothing to do with Rome." But yeah, it's the Holy Roman Empire, which makes sense if you know what the Holy Roman Empire is. It makes zero sense if you don't. You can say it's Warhammer. If someone doesn't know what Warhammer is, it's like, oh, okay, it's fantasy setting. There's dwarves with beards, but they also have mohawks. We'll go catch up the rest. It's grim. It's grim up north. You know. You need a pitch.
I want to see the Mos Eisley episode of Storage Wars. It'd be amazing. Jabba the Hutt's bidding hard on this locker, but is he going to get the evaporators he thought he would? That point you made, Scar, about not info dumping and also sort of resetting or reestablishing expectations. One of my favorite tools for that as a GM, if I've got players who are kind of off the rails or on the wrong, they're just barking up the wrong tree. My favorite phrase is, "It would occur to your character that," and you can basically open up the top of their heads and either pour in a correction to the wrongful assumption they've made and articulated, or a little bit of lore that kind of helps to reset their imagination about what this world is like, especially if you're in a non-standard. Everyone's got a spirit animal on their shoulder or something, but it occurs to your character. And it also starts to get players to think about having their characters not be them. Their characters know things that they don't know, and maybe they can leverage that in the future. And they internalize it. So all of a sudden the player's like, oh yeah, that's the thing I know about this world now. I'm going to lean on that for the next scene, at least.
100%. Brandon Sanderson is allowed to take 100 pages to explain one of his magic systems in the opening of his book. You are not able to do that. And even him doing it was a bad idea, and everyone makes fun of that. One of his novels opens with basically a video game tutorial of how the magic system works, and it's complete nonsense. It's fully internally consistent and makes sense once you've been at it a while. But you're like, what is he talking about? First lashings and second lashings? Is there ginger beer now? What's going on at all? Don't the magic system can be like, it's magic. You'll figure it out as we go along, how magic works and why it's important. There are games for which magic is central. Like if you decide to play Mage the Ascension as your first RPG, which I did, terrible idea. Don't do that.
Oh
you
wow!
This is why I'm broken.
And so much.
If you want to start out going, oh, Mage Ascension, you're going to have to explain the magic system. Don't pick a game like that. There are games which are quite either involved or maybe high concept set around a particular thing. I wouldn't start with one of those. Start with lads with guns or lads with axes, and you'll work out the rest. You can have guys casting firebolt, that's fine. But once you start getting into the metaphysics of this game is that reality is a consensual model. And you're better off just saying, look, we'll start with something a bit simpler. Don't start with too complex a setting. Have a 5-minute blurb. Have your water. Read the scenario in the rule book twice. Or read the scenario in the foreshortened rule book twice. Give everyone a pre-gen character. What else we got, guys?
Right, we're in the home straights. Really quickly, sorry, we'll go to Dave next. If you are making things, if you want to be a maker GM or a terrain GM or a battle match GM, fine, whatever. But if it's your first session and you already have a scenario that accommodates it, has it, handouts, just print them out, use the official ones, photocopy them, do them in Photoshop, whatever your level of skill. Handouts will keep your players occupied. It's information they can refer to again and again, and it's stuff that you don't have to keep telling them, and they can pass around the table while you're talking to someone else. Go.
You can probably gem, if you're willing to give it a go. You might not be the world's best GM, but nobody is at the start.
Yeah. You may be thinking that having a long and fully planned out campaign should be your starting goal. The reason we're saying to start with a pre-gens and a starter module is get your feet wet, get your worries and thing, and then you are so much better equipped for longer term play once you understand the process that you're dealing with. You don't fret about capturing your friends for a 14-month D&D campaign stretching into epic levels. Just get your basics, and then you can just reset, make proper characters after a few sessions, and engage people that they just. But the fundamentals are to see what your player style is, what your style is, and what is going to appeal to your group in the long term. That's the thing that you need to start GMing to find out.
Right. So go and GM, and this party is over.
Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. Join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter, or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, but you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.